Hello. Just waiting for my spotters to tell me that everything is okay. Um, I don't know if my mic is actually sounding of anything. Let's have a look. Yep, looks like the mic's on. All right, cool. So, welcome everyone to CiviCRM episode 14, CiviCRM TV episode 14 even. Let's just see me. So I'm in my jacket and my hat today. I've not stopped. So today we're going to do an introduction to CiviCRM, and it is a bit weird. We're on our 14th episode now, and we're kind of right in the middle, and we've decided to do an introduction. Now, one of the reasons for doing that at this time is that the assumption's always been that people watching these videos or who are looking at CiviCRM will understand the terminology and understand what things mean when we talk about them. So I thought it was a good opportunity to actually reset that a little bit. And I mean, obviously we're based in the UK, and some of the terminology in CiviCRM is probably quite US centric, and it's difficult for people outside of the US to always make the correct assumption about what something means or what it's supposed to do. So I thought it would be useful to just cover that stuff a little bit and make sure that we're all on the same page and that we all understand what the power of CiviCRM is and what its capabilities are. So this session is probably more towards the beginner stroke explorers out there who are looking at CRMs in general, maybe started to look a little bit seriously at CiviCRM and trying to just get your head around what it is, what it does, and how it works. So we've obviously been working with CRMs. I mean, me personally, I've worked with CiviCRMs ever since I left university, to be honest, and I take it as a very kind of second nature thing. What is a CRM? Why do you need one? We often just kind of we just take it for granted that you as a explorer is going to just know all this stuff. So if we start at the real basics, so why do you need a CRM? So often you end up in a position where you're a small not-for-profit or a small organization, micro charity if you want, and that you are recording bits of information in various places, spreadsheets, etc. And everything's fine. The not-for-profit is working fine, and then there's normally an event that happens, like change of staff or a sudden increase in income or trying to claim gift aid or something. Something happens, or you're trying to run a big event. And then you start to think, well, all right, I can sort of see why my current process isn't working. And then the next kind of journey, or the next stage of your journey, is then to say, well, let's get someone to help us. And you might get a kind of business process consultant or someone to help you at that level to tell you what to do. And they'll normally say, you need a CRM, right? And you're none the wiser. You're just following what they're telling you to do, and they may explain it a bit, but by the time it reaches down to the actual users of that system, the initial instruction and the reasons can sometimes get lost. Now there is a different way that it works, and that is it's a user-driven change. So users are tired of using systems that don't meet their needs, so they're trying to run online events, or they want people to subscribe to forms and submit forms and subscribe to newsletters, and you want to manage your GDPR and all this kind of stuff. So GDPR is another good event where everyone suddenly went, oh, I need a CRM because I need to capture GDPR preferences. Right? So like I say, the other way that this change is driven is from users driving it. And there you end up with a different type of explorer. So we'll try and cover both off. So for those of you that think or know that you need a CRM, but you're not quite sure why, or you're not quite sure what, then that's the first thing to look at internally, is what is it that you're trying to do? What are the key Yeah, Daniel is saying the chat's disabled. It's deliberate. The chat never really has anybody on it. I will ditch it in the next one because, like I say, it's not that kind of it's not that kind of session that we run really where we have a lot of people chatting. So I've left it there for now, but I will get rid of it next time. But yeah, so just going back, what was I saying? So so for the explorers out there, what we're going to try and do is just cover off the key aspects of the CRM. So why Civi? What does it offer that's different to Salesforce, Dynamics, etc., etc.? Why would you think about it? I mean, CiviCRM probably has a reputation in the wider not-for-profits of being a small charity system. I'm going to obviously disagree with that statement. Let's talk about that later. But there are some, with great power comes great responsibilities. Probably my reaction to that, which is, if what Civi offers is a lot of power, in terms of process, in terms of data, in terms of functions, in terms of exposure, in terms of integration, and if you're not careful, then that power can bite you, right? So that doesn't really apply to small charities because they're very unlikely to start trying to do things that are under the hood, i.e. they're not going to start doing development and extensions and not really do that themselves. Whereas if you are a larger to a medium to large charity, you're probably more likely to develop and bespoke your CRM system to meet your needs. And that's where Civi lets you do what you like, and you can end up with a situation where you didn't quite expect the level of change that happened, and then you end up with problems. But that's not really Civi's fault, if you like. We have Civi running with millions of contacts, millions of contributions, online access. A couple of the mental health charities we work with have specific days where mental health has been talked about, and they have over 1 million visitors coming, submitting information, doing things in the space of a couple of hours. So it really isn't about scale, it's about business process, and it's about that level of control over Civi that sometimes could be perceived to be a weakness when actually it's a strength if it's managed properly. Come back to the explorers. So I'm darting around a little bit on a few subjects. So let's just come back to Civi. So let me share my screen. Otherwise, we'll have another one. My spotter's pretty useless. Won't tell me. So the first thing is, why do I need a CRM? So I'm going to come into the homepage of CiviCRM. So why do I need a CRM? Right. So I've got technical needs. Right. So my current system won't allow me to technically do things that I want to do. I've got regulation and rules that need to be adhered to. So that's another driver for digital change. I've got aspirations. I'm a charity that's got real big aspirations, and I need to engage with other platforms, with other digital transformation within the business in order to make that change happen. So there's a load of reasons, right? So it's really important to understand. And there's obviously technical explorers, right? So people that have heard of Civi, we get a lot of Civi CRM implementations that we take over that were done by a non-CRM consultancy, i.e. a web consultancy, just said, might have just had a look at a few videos and said, oh yeah, Civi CRM seems like it will do what this charity needs. And they implement it as part of the web project, but really have no real deep understanding of how it works. So then then that not-for-profit will reach out to us and try and understand what they've got and how best to use it. So you might be a technical person that's looking, and hopefully you'll find this a little bit useful as well, right? So you can fit into any of those categories, and you've all got different needs. But what you need to understand is what Civi can offer, and then you can explore a bit deeper into the technical integrations, or how do I extend, or how is the database held, and what can I do with it, and all this kind of stuff. So today what we'll do is we'll just go through some of the basics of Civi. So the first thing is, when you hear people talking about Civi CRM, you'll hear CMS and WordPress and Drupal bandied about, and you might not know what they are, right? So Civi's one of Civi's core strengths is its integration with your website, and Civi CRM itself is open source, which means It doesn't mean free. So often people think open source is free, it's cheap, therefore it's of no value. It's not free. What it is it's license free, right? So you could be a charity with one person who then grow, or not for profit with one person, or a for profit with one supporter. You then grow to 1 million supporters, and you grow to 100 staff. Your CiviCRM implementation is not going to cost you any more in terms of licensing from as it did from day one up to day 1 million, right? It is open source in the sense that it is license free. That also entitles you to the source code, so that if I wanted to fundamentally alter the way Civi works, then I could do, and I could do that without license, right? So I don't need to pay anyone to make those changes. And when I say pay anyone, I don't need to pay a royalty or a fee to make those changes. I need to pay for resource, and I need to pay for the skills to make that happen, right? So the free element purely applies to licensing. It's important to understand that we get a lot of charities that's the implication is it's open source, so therefore it's going to be really cheap for us to get this implemented. It can be cheap to implement, but in order to make organizational change and to adopt the CRM, you do need to invest, whether it's time or money or energy, whatever it is, you do need to invest. So that kind of change, if I just for instance, if I just fired up a spreadsheet and said I'm just going to record stuff in here, if I'm the only one doing it and I can't persuade anybody else to do it, it's not long before that spreadsheet is useless. The CRM should be treated exactly the same. If you don't manage to successfully adopt it, then not only was it not free, it cost you time and energy that you probably didn't have spare. So that's one important distinction, that it's not free per se, right? So you will have to pay a consultancy, or if you're quite technical, you will need to invest time to get the knowledge you need to get in order to implement it. So going back to the CMS thing, most not-for-profits, and actually a lot of websites these days are based on either WordPress or Drupal or Joomla. Now they're, again, big website content management system, CMSs, that are open source and therefore license free again. Now WordPress has a different architecture to Drupal, and they're kind of aimed at different markets, if you like. But I'm not going to get into that. Well, we've done a separate CiviCRM, CiviTV episode about that. Feel free to have a look at it. But there are different reasons. But if you hear CiviCRM and WordPress or CiviCRM and Drupal, that's not a different CiviCRM. It's all the same. There are some minor differences in terms of functionality, but they're the same. So in order to access my CiviCRM, I am going to go through my website. Now, I might have a separate website that is purely dedicated to the CRM, or that might be my public facing website. That's an implementation question. But you can't get to CiviCRM without going through a portal of sorts, right? So that might be Drupal, it might be WordPress, it might be Joomla. But I'm going to go through one of them to get there. So I'm doing mine on WordPress because I like to play both sides of the CMS battle. And then they're saying she can only see the homepage, because I haven't done anything yet. I'm just going to wait for her to confirm. Just let me know you can see it going up and down. So I'm just waiting for her to say. Yeah, I've hidden the WordPress menu. So let me just expand that out. So I think what she's saying is she can't see the W. She can't see it. So I'm going to show it because. Okay. So so she can see it. That's fine. So when I get into WordPress, let me just collapse that. You might see it like this. Actually, I'm going to go back. Let me go to the WordPress dashboard. So if I'm in my WordPress and I have permissions to see CiviCRM, I should see an icon like that. If I've got the menu items open, I should see CiviCRM like that. And in Drupal, it's very similar. Except it's on the top menu, and once you're into CiviCRM, you're going to see something like this, right? So you might see a different theme, it looks different, but the content and the entities and the things that we're going to talk about, you should see regardless of how you got in here. So what does CiviCRM offer? Why, what's the difference between it and a spreadsheet? So one of the key reasons that you probably want to employ a CRM as opposed to a bespoke system that you build yourself, be that forms and sheets and Google Docs and whatever, is that they offer you the flexibility to standardize some of your processes and your workflow. So what CiviCRM offers is a whole suite of tools that are pre-built on the kind of 90% rule, if you like. So this is how 90% of organizations out there function. So this is probably going to fit for you. If it doesn't, there is a ecosystem, so a bunch of people and users who contribute to CiviCRM's functionality in the form of extensions, right? So an extension allows me to take what somebody else has done or what someone's contributed and enhance my CiviCRM or change my CiviCRM to also do what they did for theirs, right? So in the WordPress world, that's referred to as plugins, right? So you have plugins where you can say, well, let me plug in something that will let me use Stripe as a payment processor. Let me plug in WooCommerce because I want to start selling things through my website. So in the CiviCRM world, those things are called extensions, right? So I can have multiple extensions on my Civi. Most extensions should be CMS agnostic. They wouldn't care whether it was Drupal or WordPress, but some are, obviously, because they're using some of that functionality. So one of those extensions is the kind of theming one. So they're called Shoreditch, and it's about the different layouts, right? So a kind of dynamic layout and layout builders that go with it. So there's a few Bootstrap themes. So just to pick up on that point, so Bootstrap, toolkits, all this, you'll hear a lot of this kind of terminology, and it can be off-putting for the non-technical person looking at CiviCRM thinking, I don't understand any of this, I don't know what it means. You don't necessarily need to, would be my take on it. CiviCRM, the CiviCRM community is quite a technical community. Open source communities tend to be, because they allow technical people to collaborate, and therefore the driver is often a technically driven project as opposed to a user driven project. So we do have documentation, so we're books.civicrm, where you can go and see documentation that's much more user driven, but through the UI you'll often see a lot of technical wording that might not make sense. So my advice to be, don't worry about it unless you need to worry about it. I'll try and explain a few of them now so that you hopefully that'll help you. So what I'm looking at now is my kind of dashboard, and every user gets a dashboard. So when I'm set up as a user in the CMS, so again, in order to access CiviCRM, I need to be a user in the CMS. So whether that's WordPress, Drupal, or Joomla, I need to be a user in that system, and then I'm given permissions to access CiviCRM. And once I do that, then when I land on Civi, I'll see my dashboard by default. So again, the extensions might change that, but by default, that's how it would work. And my dashboard is my dashboard, right? So if I said, well, I don't want to see CiviCRM resources, but I do want to see up and coming activities and contact details, I don't even know what that is, then that's my dashboard, and it's going to show only for me like that. Right, so for any other user, they can tailor theirs. So if I'm an events user, I might tailor my dashboard to show up and coming events, or events that I'm managing, and then when I log in, I'll just see that, and I can just use that to carry out my daily duties. Whereas somebody else, a membership person, might have a membership dashboard set up. So these are the dashlets. I can move them around. I can move that over there, and like I say, this will remember these settings and move that over there, so I've got more space. So I'm seeing contact dashboard, and this dashlet is actually a report, so I can embed reports in here. So that and reports themselves are a discussion to have later. So let's just whip through the menu. So I get the first menu item I get is a quick search. So here, this is where I can find contacts. So the kind of fundamental underlying building block of CiviCRM is a contact. Everything kind of hangs off a contact. Yes, you can have events and you can have campaigns that are independent of contacts, but they're not really of any use until there are contacts associated with them. So for me, the fundamental building block of CiviCRM is a contact, and that contact could be an organization, it could be an individual, and it could be a household. Now in the UK we don't use household so much, but we have a few clients that do use households where they've got charitable giving coming from a household, if you like. A communication is going to a household, and they want to be able to associate all individuals within a household without having to use sibling type relationships and keeping it all kind of gender neutral, etc., etc. So they're the three different types, and within each of those types I can have subtypes. So within individuals I might have something like a sponsor, I might have something like a VIP, I might have something like trying to think, a supplier, for instance. Under organization I might have different types. I might have corporate sponsors, so organizations that help and donate towards their charity. We might have suppliers as another type under organizations. So when I'm searching in Civi, I can search across the board. So if I don't know if Cisco's still there, but let's just try it now. So yeah, so there's default organization and my dog and then me. So I'm seeing a combination of different types of contacts, but they're all contacts fundamentally. And the quick search is a good way to just find someone. If I was on the phone and trying to find someone, I could just type in their name. There's no one in there. I don't even know who's in this database, so let's have a look. No, Joe, no. This database is pretty rubbish, so there's no one in here, so that's good. But I can type in the name and get them. Then I've got a couple of IDs, so I'll come onto these later. I won't do them now. So I can restrict that search to first name, last name, email address, blah, blah, blah. Pretty straightforward stuff that doesn't need explanation. Now I've got another search. So why have I got another search? So this is a much fuller search. So I can search for specific things within CiviCRM. Let's just focus on advanced search. The advanced search will give me pretty much everything I want. So across all criteria, I can do a search, and this is going to return contacts unless I tell it to do something different, right? So none of this is probably going to make sense to you if you're watching this and you're not really sure what any of this means. So we won't go into this too much, but in terms of searching, I've got the ability to search pretty much across my database and find people, right? That's the key bit. That's really what I want to know. Can I search? Often in the UK, we'll have a tendering process when you're trying to get win a bid, if you like, and you'll see requirements like that. Can I find people that have given X amount within a period? Yeah, you can. So I would look for people that have made a contribution within a period of time, and I might go further with that. I might say, well, and they did it by direct debit, and it was a credit card, and X, Y, and Z, right? So yes. So if you're trying to quantify a requirement and say, well, can you search in CiviCRM? You can just have a look at the search, advanced search, and satisfy your needs there. And if you can't do that, then you can go to the search builder, and that's a far more kind of technical search. So I won't go into that too much here, but I get much more in the terms of operation, right? So I can say I can exclude names. So don't give me anybody that's got the first name of John. I can do ins, not empties. So I can find everyone who is missing a first name, etc., etc. So I'm getting a much more powerful search in the search builder. But they're the key things you just need to know. Yes, you can search. Yes, you can do a database level query type search within Civi. Those things are ticked, right? So in terms of contacts, often again you'll see in these kind of tenders, the CRM needs to allow you to group and segment contacts. Yes, you can do that in Civi. There's groups. So the groups are either static, where I'm physically putting people into and out of groups. Good example of that is newsletter groups, for instance. People opt in or opt out, and they manage and control that, or I manage and control it. But either way, there's people, they don't just end up in the newsletter group because of something else. They normally would have opted into it, especially with the GDPR style rules. It's got to be a positive action these days. There are obviously caveats. So for instance, if someone's a member of an organization, I might want them to automatically get the newsletter. But just for the sake of this conversation, static groups are, we're controlling who's going in and out, whether they're doing it themselves, whether they're doing it, or they could call us and we could do it, or we're doing it because we're doing specific types of communications, right? They're static groups. So there is also a dynamic group, or a smart group in the Civi sense that it's called. And a smart group is in effect a saved search. So let's just do a search here. Dog's making funny noises, having a dream about something. So let's say I did a search for everyone who has contributed in the last 90 days, right? So let's just do that. I don't know if I've got anyone in this database. I hope so. There's one person, it's me, in that. Doing a great job of running my fake charity. So I've run my search. If I wanted to create a smart group, a saved query, I can just, from this results, I can do create a smart group, right? So that will then remember the query, or remember the criteria for what designates, or what is a positive confirmation that someone belongs in that group. And doing that has some benefits. So for instance, if it was more complex than that, so I might do, they're based in London, they've given in the last 90 days, and they're interested in volunteering, I might save that as a smart group, because I've got other users who run events who need volunteers in specific regions, and I don't want them to have to work this stuff out every time. So I want to save some smart groups that allow those users to just go into that group and find them all and send them all an email to say, we've got an event running this weekend, can they volunteer and help? So the kind of smart group stroke dynamic group in Civi is about that. It's about hiding some of your business rules and automating them, so you don't have to, as a user, you don't have to learn everything that you do as a charity and all the nuances that you have in terms of your criteria, and they're all hidden behind smart groups, right? So all I have to do is just pick my smart group that I want to talk to, and I don't need to worry about GDPR, and I don't need to worry about have they opted in, and I don't need to worry about is it a valid email address. I don't need to worry about all this stuff. It's taken care of because the smart group criteria has it all in there. So they're groups. So again, like, I'm just in my head, I was trying to think how to present this, so I'm just going to do it as though I'm filling in a tender document and I'm getting questions in that tender document, and just in the kind of order that they normally are in. It's normally along, can you store different types of contacts? Can you store organizations? Can you store relationships between these different types of contact? Yes, yes, yes. That is pretty obvious in the Civi world. When we look at an individual, you'll see, and create relationships, I can create all kinds of things. They'll often then say, can you segment and group? So yes, you can. Can you tag? Yes, you can. So tags are specific areas, specific markers. Daniel's saying 30 minutes done. I know. I said it was going to be a short one, but it doesn't look like it will be. But tags are specific markers against contacts. So it might be this contact is interested in volunteering, or this contact is a technical person, etc., etc. So I've got the ability to do either segmentation and groups, or specific tags and interests, and keep them separate. I could use groups for the same thing though, but there is a difference between tags and groups. Groups have a date that they've been added to the group and a date they've been removed, whereas tags is an on-off switch. There is some audit information behind the scenes, but from the front end you couldn't easily see when someone was tagged, whereas you could easily see when they were added or removed from a group. So again, things there. Then along, going back to the tender route, they'll say you should be able to merge duplicate contacts. Yes, that's there. Pretty obvious. I'm not going to go into it. I'm not trying to show you exactly how Civi works. I'm just trying to go through the menu structure and show you what's there in a nutshell. So contributions, right? So I remember now, it's about sort of 15 years ago when I first looked at CiviCRM, I was like, what is a contribution? Because it's not a term that you would normally associate with a not-for-profit, right? So normally it's donation, or normally it's a pledge, or normally it's a promise to give, but a contribution. So what's that all about? So the contributions are financial transactions, right? And they can be of different types. So they could be a donation, they could be an event fee, they could be a membership fee, they could be a purchase, they could be kind of anything, right? So Civi lets you set up what you want to set up in terms of recording income and expenditure. There's extensions to record expenditure as well. And all of that is classed under a contribution. So the contribution is the physical transaction that took place, whether it was a promise to give or an actual gift. And then you've got all the kind of settings around that. So how do I attribute that to a campaign? How is it accounted for when I push that information over to my accounting system? What should it is it completed, or is it pending? Did it fail during the credit card process? So all of these are then attributes of that contribution. And if you do find this kind of terminology confusing, there is a section in Civi called word replacements, and it's, when I first started using Civi, it was like one of my favorite areas. Wherever it's gone, customized everything in here, I think. Yeah, word replacement. So if I did find the word contribution confusing, I can just say, well, let's just replace the word contribution with donation. I wouldn't do this normally, but I'm just showing you that you can, just so that you can, if you are trying to get your organization to buy into this, rather than spending fortunes on Salesforce and whatever else you might be looking at, then often terminology is one of the biggest blockers. They can't, people can't get their heads around it. Like, we don't have contributions, we have donations, so this system is not for us. And it's like, well, no, that's just the terminology. It doesn't mean it can't do donations, So there is that powerful function there. You can do things like that. You can tailor the front end and the wording used throughout the system to fit your needs. I'm gonna just take that off because I'm gonna take that one off because it's not actually accurate. There is more to a contribution than just a straight donation. A donation is a subtype of a contribution, and that's quite important in the UK because you're doing gift aid claims maybe on some of this, and you need to differentiate between what is and what isn't claimable. So the contribution is then the kind of umbrella. These are all financial transactions that have happened, and the different contribution types are telling me whether I can or can't claim gift aid on it. Pledging, straightforward, right? So I can pledge to give. I can either do that over a period of time or just a one-off. And what Civi does is it allows me to create my workflow around that. So reminders, online completion of pledges for donors, etc., right? So all of those kind of features are there. And like I say, if the terminology sounds straightforward, I'm not going to go into it. So events is probably one of the most strongest areas of Civi. We often replace Eventbrite or other eventing systems and bring them into Civi, so that you've got all your data in one place and you're kind of heading towards that single point of truth. So I won't go into that, but all of the kind of eventing functions are there, different types, fees, no fees, discounts, different information being collected, multiple bookings, tickets, etc., right? The list is kind of endless. So mailings. So this again, just thinking back to 10, 15 years ago, this was confusing for a lot of people that we spoke to, and at the first times we started using Civi and tried to implement it at a few places, they couldn't understand mailings. Well, what's a mailing? Often they thought it was a paper mailing, a mail shot, a leaflet, a pamphlet, or whatever. In CiviCRM, a mailing is a mass email, is a bulk email. That's what it is, right? So new mailing will be a new bulk email, and then I'll schedule it and I can send it and I can pick who it's going to go to, and I can set up default headers and footers. They've bundled SMS into this menu. It doesn't really belong there, but part of my mailing communication could be an SMS communication out to contacts as well. We also do mobile apps, and we've got also push notifications in this menu as well. So that's an important thing to note. Some extensions might add menus, so you might see more than what I'm showing you. You might see less, you might see it named differently, and I've shown you some of the ways that can happen. So if yours is a little bit different, it's not like you've got a different Civi. You might just have some extensions which are altering the way it looks. So subscriptions, so let me just turn this off because I must have done that for a previous demo. So subscriptions are in effect memberships. So memberships in the UK is quite a strong base to membership. So often we'll see tenders, can you record memberships and different types of membership and different payers and X, Y, and Z. And membership itself is pretty straightforward. Sometimes it does fit multiple purposes. So I had it renamed to subscription. Publication, journal subscription could be used membership. Even kind of periods of time, so where someone's a member for a member of your organization, even if they're not a physical paying member, you can still use memberships because they give you a time period. So you can put that person into that category for a period of time, and then you can upsell, downsell, or upgrade, downgrade, or remove altogether. And you get all of that history and recording of all of that information in Civi. So again, quite a useful thing. So reports. So again, just going back to the tender thing, often you'll see in tenders, your CRM should be able to provide reports for A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right? And often in the not-for-profit world, there's not really a clear distinction between a report and a query. So often they're classed as reports. So to me and to CiviCRM, they are different. So a saved query, a search, they're things that I might do an action for, and they don't necessarily end up in an output, right? So it might be that I want to find all those volunteers in London, and I want to then communicate with them, and I might send them an email, might send them an SMS, I might get a phone, list them, call them up, right? There's multiple actions I could do off the back of it. Whereas with a report in my head, and again, I'm just telling you how I view this and how I interpret it. In my world, when it's a report, you've got a specific function that report fulfills. So a good example is we work with a couple of not-for-profits who have events which are managed by external agencies. So there might be catering that they manage. It might be the venue is also a theatre and they manage ticketing and access and etc. So that's a good fit for where I need a report that fulfills their needs. So I need a report that, because it needs to be set out in a really specific way, it needs to have certain fields on it, it needs to be nicely formatted, it needs to be PDF, and it needs to go out in an email every once a week, right? Just examples, right? So any of those things would steer me towards a report because it's repeatable and it's reproducible and it can be automated. I wouldn't do those as a smart group or a search because I'm not expecting that external agency to log in, and I'm not really wanting my internal user to have to go in and run that smart group and format it and then give it to the external agency. It's quite a lot of work, right? So I'm probably going to head towards a report in that scenario, and Civi is bundled with a bunch of reports, so I'm not going to go into them. There's a whole load of them there. You can create multiple instances of a report from a template. So there's template for contacts, there's template for contributions, and I create lots of different flavors of it. So I might create a contribution report which is purely about donations that goes out to management once a month, and I would just automate it so it just sends it to them. I don't have to do anything. So I have reports. Then I've got this admin menu if I've got admin permissions, and I've got stuff in there about the status and blah blah blah. I'm going to ignore that for now. Key bits for us is, again, if I'm going through the tender process, you should be able to add extra. Your system should allow us to add extra information and record fields like dietary requirements, like CPD points, like qualifications, blah, blah, blah. So you normally read stuff like this. So that's in the Civi world is custom fields, right? So what I'm doing is I'm customizing my CiviCRM to fit my needs. So therefore I'm going to create some fields. Those fields might be lookup lists, they might be free text, they might be files, they might be photos, they might be notes, they could be anything. And there might be some that are multi-record, i.e. qualifications. I'm going to have more than one. There might be some that are single records. So for instance, my dietary requirement is probably going to be picking from some options, but not having lots of dietary requirements over a period of time. So so I can do all of that in Civi. So the custom fields will live against my CRM instance, and I can add them to events and to other stuff as well. Off the top of my head, I can't remember what the different bits are, but I can add them to pretty much any area of CiviCRM. So if for events I had I had something like a promotion code that I was just using internally, or a kind of finance stroke reporting code that I wanted to use against all of the events, or even let's say the member of staff who actually is managing that event, I might want to add that into the event custom data, and then I can record people's names against it, and do what I want to do with it. Then I can have those fields coming out in reports as well, etc., etc. So the other part of custom fields is profiles, and I've got all these fields that I've added, and I've got a whole bunch of Civi's default fields. Now the profiles are about the shop window, if you like. So I've got my database and I've got my shop full of stuff, but I don't want Joe Blogs who's gonna sign up for my newsletter. I don't want them to see the entire list of possible fields that I'm going to capture about them. I just want to capture a few things around them. So I might want to capture their first name, their email address, and the date of birth, right? So I might just want to capture 3 fields. So I would do that using profiles. So a profile is a small set, a shop window of fields that I want to capture or want to use for forms to capture information, right? So that's profiles. Sounds a little bit complicated. The reality of the situation is that if you're a WordPress or a Drupal user, you're probably going to do that using web forms or Gravity Forms or Caldera or something else, right? Because you might want more control over the way they look and they feel. So actually, profiles is something that, in my view, in my experience, it's getting used less and less, and the transfer is happening to use the CMS tools to capture those fields into CiviCRM. So the information still comes into CiviCRM, it just comes through a different window, if you like. Daniel's typing something. I'm just going to watch that. So activity. So one of the most important things we normally see in these tenders is your CRM should be able to record any interaction we've had with a supporter. Should be able to record telephone calls, meetings, etc., etc. So those are activities in Civi. It's between an individual and yourself normally. So it might be that you sent them a mass email, it might be you sent them a single email, it might be that they came to an event, etc., etc. They're all activities, right? Relationships, so pretty obvious. This is how I can relate contacts to each other. Daniel is saying it doesn't look very good. I'm just sitting on this menu. Yeah, I'm doing it on purpose. So, relationship types. Yeah, how are individuals relating to each other? How are organizations related to each other? How are organizations and individuals related, etc., etc. Right. So those relationship types allow me to record all of that stuff. So again, pretty obvious. Contact types is what I talked about before. So it's actually subtypes is in there as well. So I'll just go into it and show you. So I've got by default individual, household, and organization, and then I can add one that says again, I'm not saying I would do this because I might record volunteers slightly differently. For instance, I might do them as anybody that's attended a volunteering event is going to be a volunteer, so I might create a smart group, so that way I'm not having to manually manage who is or isn't a volunteer. I'm letting the system work it out for me. But I'm just showing you as an example that I've created a subtype of individual that is a volunteer. So now when I go to let's just refresh my screen. So now when I go to contacts, new individual, I've got a subtype in there, new volunteer. I didn't have that before, and if I create more, I'll get more. And the benefit of doing it this way is that I can then have different fields for the different types. So for volunteers, I might start showing up fields around if they've had their certificate, their criminal records, their history checked before we let them actually volunteer. So I don't want those fields showing up for normal supporters. I only want them showing up if I've said this person is a volunteer. So there is some strong arguments and there's reasons to know when to use stuff. And I think that's the main thing for me when we come across poor implementations. It's normally that the person didn't really understand how all the different aspects of Civi work together. So they might have just gone ahead and created loads of custom fields and not realized that actually you can restrict them to a contact type, so that if you create them in the right groups, it's going to make the system far less cumbersome for the user, where they're not seeing hundreds of fields all the time, regardless of what type of person it is. Or we see that, there's a lot of groups and very few smart groups, or a lot of smart groups that make no sense. We'll see a lot of this kind of stuff, or activities being used to record membership when the membership system itself could have been used, etc., etc. So just coming onto this, I know we're coming up to the hour soon, so I'm going to try and finish soon. So localization. So I talked a bit about Civi having this perception that it's US based. If you look at stats, so if you're exploring, have a look at this site, stats.civicrm.org. This is done by I've forgotten his name now. It's going to be well offended. His name will come back to me in a minute. But this basically will give you an insight into Civi's usage and how it's doing in terms of its implementation base throughout the world. So we can see that yes, the majority of downloads is in the US, but actually in terms of usage, it's pretty well spread across the rest of the world. So the US is 3,500. The UK is up there 2,200. There's about 2,000 sites that haven't provided where they're from, Germany, Canada, etc., etc. So, if you're this argument that we hear about, well, Civi is for small, not for profits, and there's not really many users out there, and it's not that popular. The stats tend to disagree with that somewhat. Just looking at the active stats, active site stats, so you get an idea of that installation keeps rising. I keep thinking it's flattened, but it keeps rising. So 11,500 almost installations. How many contacts do they hold? So 250,000 up. There's at least 200 of them. For us, when we've got a large client, we turn off these stats, so we don't actually report back, because we don't want any load. We don't want any kind of additional stuff in our Civi that could break, that could cause a problem. So we tend to turn off the reporting. So that number's probably a lot higher. All these numbers, I expect them to be a lot higher. Just gives you an idea of what's what. They've changed this list now, so it no longer shows which organization is responsible for the extensions you're looking at, but just between me and you, we did that. We look after this, we did that, and which other ones are there? There's more. We did that one, we did that one. It's good, isn't it? So yeah, so we've got quite a lot in the top 20, if you like. Flex Mailer is really connected to Mosaico, so I class them the same. We say Mosaico is the number one, and I think we did a session on that already. So again, you feel free to have a look at Mosaico and mailing in CiviCRM and how it works. So what else do we have? So Just going through the tender process again, the system should have full auditing. Yes, that's in here. Any implementer out there, turn on logging. That's my, if I had one recommendation to you, it will be turn on logging so you can see what goes wrong. If something does go wrong, then you can see what went wrong and when it went wrong or who did what. We often get users or clients complain that something's gone missing, and then you have a look at logging and you can tell that organization exactly who and when that item got deleted and by who. So soon they start to trust the system a lot more when you've got that information at hand. If you don't turn on logging, yes, you know roughly, but you don't know exactly down to the field level what the change was. I'd recommend you turn on that. What's the rest of this? So extensions we've talked about. Components, so you might not see everything that I showed you on Civi, and that's because in your components, on your demo, wherever you're looking at this, the right components aren't turned on. So there's more than what we looked at, more than what we've been through. I've just turned everything on now. The campaigns are there. So campaigns, I'll just briefly touch on it because I'm going to try and finish in the next few minutes. In terms of Civi, and especially in the UK, often you'll have this thing about campaign codes and nominal codes and this kind of coding that people need to do. It's important because you need to be able to track what marketing streams are working for you and how to attribute funds and etc. etc. So often we use the Civi campaign module to do that. So a campaign can span a lot of entities, so it could be against an event, an activity, a contribution, a open on an email. It can span all kinds of things. So if I need to see how effective a mailing was, I could create a campaign in Civi and attach that campaign to that mailing, and then attach it to a contribution page, and then I'm going to start to see return on investment on how effective my campaigning is actually going. Cases there, we use case a lot, so often again when you're exploring, you'll kind of look at case and go, we don't do cases, but case is about automated workflow. Really, it's about setting up automatic processes. So we work with a couple of membership organizations that have quite a complex joining process. So I need to prove my qualifications, I need to provide letters of reference, I need to attend a meeting with certain people, I need to do X, Y, and Z, right? So that is regardless of who I am. When I apply to join, I have to do these things. So there we use CiviCase because as soon as that person submits the form, it generates a case, it generates all the activities that they need to carry out, all the workflow, it creates a timeline, and it will then remind people when that hasn't happened. So that can really make your processing a lot easier, and it gives you a dashboard so you can see who's at what stage in that process and what are the most outstanding activities and what's coming up, and it can make your life a lot easier, right? So the case has got use there. Grants is for organizations that give grants. So if I'm a micro or a small charity and I give micro grants out to people, bursaries, sponsorships, things like that, then you can manage that all in CiviCRM as well. It's not grant application, so that's what I wanted to just highlight there. Some people think that's where I can manage the application of grants. No, if you're going to do that, again, we suggest using case, because what you're doing is you've got a process and a timeline that you need to adhere to apply for that grant. And when you get that grant, then there's normally a KPI or reporting kind of timeline that you have to then adhere to get the rest of the payments, etc. So you would normally employ CiviCase for that. This is purely about managing who you've given grants to and for what amounts, where they are in that process, etc. Reports we talked about. Just think if there's any. I think that's everything really. Just going back to events. So events has two different sides to it. The event and then the people that are attending. In the UK, you'd normally call them attendees or participant, or I'm using participant. I don't know which country I belong to anymore, but there'd normally be attendees in the UK or event registrants or something like that. So in the Civi terminology, they're participants. So you've got the event, and then you've got the participants, and a participant might be an attendee, a delegate, a paying attendee. There might be a sponsor, there might be a volunteer at that event. There might be a member who is attending, and there could be any kind of participant role, if you like. So I'm going to stop because I've just noticed that I'm talking faster and faster, and it's only a matter of time before no one can understand what I'm saying anymore. So I'm hoping that's a good intro to you guys, and if there's specific areas that you want us to explore a bit more, do shout. If you want an intro into the usage of specific bits, please do shout. If you want to keep in touch, we've had a few people contact us and say, how can I know about the TV sessions that you're doing and what's upcoming, etc., etc. So we have ideas.CiviCRM for suggestions of what people are up to. I haven't followed the last two because they need preparation from us, and I really haven't had the time to prep a Mautic demo and a I can't remember what the other one was now, but there's a couple of the requests which need a web form, I think it was. They need quite a lot of prep to do a good demo, and I just haven't had time. But I promise for the next one we will do either Mautic or web form, depending on what's in the queue. But that one of the ones that are requested we'll do. But the other way you can keep in touch with us and stay informed is obviously subscribe to our channel. We're the CiviCRM TV channel. You can find it on ideas.civicrm.tv as well. And if you subscribe, you'll get automatically notified when we have sessions planned, and when they're even the past sessions, you'll still get notified that they're starting or they've finished, etc. So try and subscribe if you can. Just keep in touch and let us know if there's things that you want to see. That's it. I need to take my dog for a walk as well. So thanks for watching, guys, and stay tuned for the next one.